Okay, video started.
Okay.
Hang on.
Yeah, where's that? Hello, and welcome to the... What?
Am I gonna get a cue to walk in?
Yes, you'll know when to walk in. We can keep this on the video too.
Turn the dryer on?
No, it's fine.
Are you sure?
Alright, hello, and welcome to the 6th episode of the Captain's Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Captain Morgan. This episode is brought to you by McDonald's. Just kidding, it's April Fool's Day here. This episode is actually brought to you by Glycemic fish oil. This episode is about nutrition, so it's only fitting that we have a quality fish oil as the sponsor. On today's show, we have another special guest. He has his CrossFit Level 1 certification, and he's been doing CrossFit for 5 years. He's a research nerd and has attended the Charles Poliquin seminar. If you don't know who he is, look him up. And he is the nutrition coach at the gym that I coach at, CrossFit Dana Point. So please give a warm welcome to Patrick Simon.
Well, thank you, Taylor.
Yep. Welcome.
Thank you.
Hi.
Yeah.
All right. So,
Actually, you forgot one of my qualifications.
what's that?
42 years old and 7% body fat.
There you go. That's a fantastic qualification. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Are you ahead of Zach?
I am close to Zach. I haven't tested lately, but he wanted to get to 6.
Yeah,
So-
Zach's who we had on the last podcast. He's going for 6. I said, good luck, Zach. I don't know. That's
But then,
pretty ballsy.
Since the open is done now, I've cut back on my post-workout carb intake to try and get to 6%. So
All right.
we'll just start.
Good luck with that.
Thanks.
So you want to tell people a little background about yourself? You can go wherever you want with it.
Okay, yeah, I am a financial analyst. That's how I make a living. But I think like every good scientist, and I consider myself a scientist, even though some people might not think that financial analyst is a scientist. Still looking at research, especially when it comes to capital markets. So I grew up, so to speak, doing research, and with my increased, interest in health and fitness, have brought over my, research abilities over to this world, and it's really paid off. And I really enjoyed, doing the research and the groundwork to come up with opinions and recommendations.
So what got you into CrossFit? So you've been doing it for 5 years. So what were you doing before that, and then what prompted the transition?
Okay, so I think I, like most middle-aged men at the time, went to the gym and did bench press for 20 minutes, pretended to do some squats, and then left the gym. And then every time I tried to do any kind of sports, like basketball or whatever, I'd be super sore the next day. And I started realizing I might be able to bench quite a bit, but it doesn't mean I'm fit.
Yeah.
It certainly doesn't mean I'm healthy. So, and then I moved to Colorado and was looking for the closest gym to my office, and walked in, pulled up the closest gym. So I walk in there, and there's this lady, nothing's going on, and I'm asking the lady where the machine. And she's like, well, this is not that kind of gym, So. Anyways, so I ended up, she talked me into staying, at least trying out, the first just one day, and I did the warm-up, but I didn't know it was a warm-up. And after the warm-up, I was exhausted, and she said, well, you ready to work out? And I said, wasn't that the workout? And she goes, no, that was just the warm-up. So anyways, I did the WOD, of course, very, very scaled.
Yeah.
I was just, exhausted at the end, and but I was up to, of course, I signed up, and the rest is history.
Cool. So when did you get your level 1?
I got my level 1 a couple months ago.
Cool. What prompted that?
I don't have any intentions of coaching, but I felt like, like I said, I love to learn, so I just wanted to see, if there's anything I could benefit from by taking level 1, and it was interesting.
Yeah, you want to talk a little bit about what the level 1 entails, like what people can expect if they're looking to take it?
Yeah, I was more superficial than I was hoping for. I felt like there was a lot of time that could have been spent on the science behind what they're teaching, and not just kind of spoon feed us some very, I'd say, shallow information on some things. Movement-wise, I didn't learn a whole lot after doing 5. So I think if you move well and you have good coaches, I think if you do level 1, you're not going to learn much movement-wise. I felt like most people who were there and had been CrossFit for over 3 years didn't get corrected very much in their movements. But you do learn a little bit on coaching cues, which again for me wasn't really a primary area of concern, but from some folks out there who are wanting to coach, so maybe very helpful. And then on the energy system side, on the nutrition side, it was okay. But again, it just had such limited amount of time.
Yeah.
Just 2 days, that I felt that it was too shallow. But I think level 1 is just the beginning of the journey. I don't know how many levels there are. There are 4 levels.
4, yeah.
Yeah. So that's just the beginning. I guess you do get a broad view of what CrossFit is and how you should be coaching and what you should be.
Yeah. So the level 1, just because you have your level 1 doesn't mean that you're a coach or a good coach. There's a lot more that goes into coaching. Like Pat says, you don't learn everything from the level 1, and it's not designed for that. It's just a basic overview of the 9 foundational movements in CrossFit. Like you said, coaching cues, and then a little bit about nutrition, specifically the zone method. And then, well, we won't go into the different levels right now, but so then what got you, so you started in fitness, or in CrossFit at least, like 5 years ago. When did you start researching about nutrition?
I'd say probably 3 years ago. I have spent I worked out a lot in high school and had something resembling a 6-pack, but I was never below 10% body fat, and that's usually when, at 10% body fat for males and probably 16% for females, you start seeing some kind of ab definition.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I really wanted, and after years and years and years of working out, never really had it, so started, actually I'd probably given up 3 years ago and said, well, I'll never have a 6-pack, it's just not for me, it's not gonna happen. But then I started researching nutrition a little bit more, started understanding, and quite frankly, was listening to another podcast in which Charles Baldwin was in. And I was automatically hooked because he's really the only, I think, serious coach, that really pushes his audience, his followers, to go do their own research. And that kind of woke up that thing I had beside me of wanting to do my own research, and what he said made perfect sense. And he just made a point to say, don't trust every article you read, because you're going to be reading an article that tells you to do A, the next article that tells you to do B. Well, which one is right?
Yeah.
So, but if you actually go on PubMed, and anybody can, it's most of the articles are free, or at least the abstract's free. So you can go online, go to the PubMed website, and then pull up, basically research on any health and nutrition topic there is, and find out for yourself, and read the different studies on whatever subject you're looking at, and draw your own conclusions, because the amount of time that I see somebody's citing a certain study in an article, but they've left things out or they've misinterpreted the article is that happens quite often.
Yeah.
And there's so many people that would follow that by mistake, or they shouldn't be following it that way.
So before we go into like how you can differentiate between good articles and bad articles on PubMed, you want to talk a little bit about what you've learned from Paul Quinn in the seminar or in your research of him?
Well, I'd say I attribute most of what I learned from Charles, not only what I've, again, because he instigated me to do my own research, but also some of the things that, he used to say. He passed away, by the way, for those who don't know, but he used to say that there's no research study that says getting kicked in the nuts hurts, but by experience you know that. So
Yeah.
Since he coached so many Olympians, by the way, hundreds of Olympians, so he knows, even though there's no research studies, some of the things that he knows is from trial and error and from coaching so many people throughout the decades, that he just knows some things, as a clinician, not. So he's actually ahead of the research people. He would actually, maybe some people would take some of his suggestions and then test out in a research study. But yeah, Paul, I really attribute most of what I learned to him. And for instance, post or nutrition, that's pre, peri, and post workout. I feel like there's so many supplements out there, so many conflicting evidence, but and I don't know if people understand how hormones play a significant role in the quality of a workout and in the quality of your recovery afterwards.
Yeah.
And nutrition has everything to do with that.
Yeah, we can get into that a little bit later. But for now, let's go into, we're talking a lot about PubMed, so how you can differentiate between a good study and a bad study, because usually for every study, there's probably another study saying the exact opposite. So how you can differentiate between those?
Yeah, I'd say source of funding is one issue that obviously needs to be observed. So if you're looking at I don't know, something like looking into eggs, for instance, and if it's a study that's been funded by Egg Association of America, then you should be concerned about that. But usually that's not the main issue. I'd say the main issue is the sample size, one, so how many subjects there are in the study. If it is double blind, so the people administering the study, do they know if they're giving somebody placebo or not?
Yeah.
That's something that's been that's an issue and it should be noted. And then you should also look at the sample size, but also the profile of the sample. So it might not be pertinent to you. So if the sample is made up of 70 to 80-year-olds that are Norwegian in origin and never lifted a dumbbell in their lives, you can end up with a very different result from the same input, let's say the same drug or the same nutrition, whatever it may be, same variable, of a seasoned college athlete.
Yeah.
So those things. So make sure that the profile of the subjects in the study are most pertinent to what your case might be.
So will the abstract say that, or will you actually have to read more into the actual study?
Most abstracts will provide a general profile of the subjects, yes.
Okay, so would you say the most important part of a study would be the abstract, or should people do a little bit more reading into the study itself?
I'd say it depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for just validation of something you already read in another study or something like that, then maybe the abstract's fine. But if there's something that's conflicting information, or something you're particularly interested in and it's not mentioned in the abstract, then maybe you should actually pay and read the full study if it's not available for free. And a lot of them are available for free, but some of them.
Yeah. Are there any other credible sources besides PubMed that you like to go to?
I would say that if you find a coach that's pertinent to your sport, be it health fits, whatever it may be, but if you find a good coach who have coached champions, typically that's a pretty good source.
Yeah, because they know what they're doing.
They know what they're doing, obviously, because there's a lot of money riding on that. The athletes obviously want to be coached by the best, and countries usually select the best coaches possible that they can attract. So I'd say that's usually a pretty good source.
Yeah. So Charles Poliquin, like we were talking about, is one of those people. If you guys want to know more about him, he passed away, but his Instagram continues to post. Just look up Charles Poliquin on Instagram. One of my favorites is Ben Bergeron, and his podcast, Chasing Excellence. He talks a lot about nutrition in there, as well as coaching strategies and fitness, all that type of stuff. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about nutrition timing, pre, peri, and post workout, and how that plays a role in your hormones and stuff like that.
Okay, so I would even expand that more to, let's go 24 hours around the clock. Typically in the morning, you'd want to have low glycemic carbs. And I'm not even getting into how many carbs you're going to need as an individual, but let's say if you're going to have carbs, then typically in the morning, assuming you're not going to work out anytime soon when you wake up. So you wake up and you'd have, Charles Poliquin is a big proponent of the nut and meat breakfast.
Yeah.
And I did that for a while. It's basically you get some kind of game meat like elk or wild boar.
Anything game meat,
game
not
meat, correct.
game meat.
Something grass-fed, obviously, and then you mix that with nuts, and maybe some butter and salt, and you eat that. And obviously there's very little, there's almost no carbs in there, based a little bit from the nuts, but also glycemic. So you'd start there, and that sets you up for the day. Low insulin, right? So your body's not, insulin is a response of sugar in the blood. So in that case, you'd have low insulin, maybe a little bit of a spike because of the protein and all that, but typically speaking, low insulin period.
So hold on, sorry to cut you off,
Sure.
but you said obviously grass-fed. That might not be so obvious to some people. So
Okay.
you want to go into the difference between grass-fed meat and non-grass-fed?
Yeah. So grass-fed, and we need to be careful these days because there's meat that's labeled grass-fed,
Right.
but it's not 100% grass-fed. I just read a package the other day that said, I don't know how many months, actually it was on a carton of milk, that the cows were grass-fed for at least 6 months, something like that. So you need to make sure that it's 100% grass-fed. Grass-finished is another way of saying that.
Yeah.
But the difference between grass-fed and non-grass-fed is you're going to have meat that has more omega-3 content than omega-6 content. Omega-6 usually comes from grains, so a lot of the cattle in the U.S. are fed soybean and corn, which then transfer the omega-6s into the meat of the cow, which is inflammatory for human beings. So, our ancestors, I think, thrived on a 4-to-1 ratio, so 4 times, they had 4 times more omega-3s and omega-6s. I think now the typical diet is 1 gram of omega-6 to 16 grams, 1 gram of omega-3s to 16 grams of omega-6s.
Yeah, bad ratio.
So bad ratio.
So this is actually a perfect time to talk a little bit about Lycee, the fish oil here. I love this fish oil. If you didn't know, fish oil is a fantastic source of omega-3s. I prefer the cod liver oil because it's one of the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet. You get more vitamins in it. So if you are eating the SAD diet, the standard American diet, you are probably not getting enough omega-3s. And instead of just upping your omega-3s, which would be beneficial, let's try to decrease the omega-6s. But taking a fish oil supplement could help with that brain health, joint health, heart health, all that stuff. We won't go too much into that. But so going back to grass-fed, I think they can call it grass-fed because every cow starts out their first, I think, 6 to 8 months of their life being raised on a pasture like grass, and then from there they're moved to the feedlots. And then cows can only live, I think it's 6 months on grain, and then they die anyway. So that's when they slaughter them because they get all fattened up from all the inflammation from the grains. And so if you're looking for actual grass-fed meat, you want the package to say grass-fed and finished or 100% grass-fed. That's how you can kind of differentiate. If it just says grass-fed, it probably isn't like 100% grass-fed. So
moving on, I guess, to the workout portion of nutrition. I'd say with rare exceptions, very high volume protocols, really before the workout, you should not be having any type of carbs. You should be focused on high protein, high fat. And the reason for that is, insulin and cortisol, which are 2 primary hormones I guess that you should be concerned when it comes to working out, are, one is antidote for the other. So if you consume carbs before you work out, then that's going to make you release insulin. And with insulin in your system, cortisol is not going to get jacked up. And cortisol is your fight or flight, hormone. So it gets you pumped up for the workout. You're going to have a better workout if your system is loaded with cortisol. So you don't want to have any kind of insulin in the system. So that's why you have high protein, high fat. In the middle of your workout, again, typically you don't want to have carbs. As I said, from the majority of your audience, no carbs. It may be, I know Gatorade, of course, there's sugar in it and whatnot, but obviously this is a terrible example. But in general, you don't want to have carbs. So whatever it may be, if you have some kind of drink in the middle of your workout, make sure that it's very minimal carbs. I say no more than 10 grams, so that insulin doesn't get released and your cortisol's free flowing. But after you work out, assuming that you are 10% body fat as a male or less, 16% body fat as a female or less, then you can have carbs after you work out. And then the benefit of that is you take your, obviously you're going to have your protein. Typically best sources will be either cow whey or goat whey or beef proteins. So you're going to take that, but you're also going to add in the carbs. And how much of carbs to add, it depends really, again, on training volumes, but I'd say anywhere from 50 grams up to 3 times your body weight in kilograms, in grams. And then, so you're gonna take that, that's gonna make you, it's a spike sugar in your blood. Insulin's gonna get released. When insulin gets released, it gets rid of the cortisol. Because cortisol around the clock, being a stress hormone, is very detrimental to the body. You know, you're gonna lose muscle mass. I mean, there's a bunch of negative side effects from having cortisol too much. And people that, you know, that have cortisol in their body too much throughout the day, people that are very stressful jobs, that kind of thing,
Yeah.
it's awful for the body, including increasing also belly fat. So you want to get rid of the cortisol, and for that, you need some insulin. So that's why taking, you know, a high quality, high glycemic carbohydrate right after you work out is important.
So we're saying high glycemic, low glycemic. Can you go into the differentiation between high glycemic and low glycemic and glycemic load and how that plays a role?
Absolutely. So there's a glycemic index and glycemic load, and that's all pertaining to what your body's response is to when the sugar is absorbed into your bloodstream. So for instance, something that's low glycemic, let's say glycemic index of 50 or less, typically means that your response, your insulin's response, your blood sugar is going to increase slowly. So the insulin response won't be so high.
Yeah.
Something with a glycemic index 50 and above, all the way up to 100, which is white rice, then has a very significant spike in your blood sugar, which typically means you're going to release a lot of insulin. And insulin is a very useful hormone, as it's a transport system for macronutrients into your cells. So, you know, right after you work out and you take that protein shake, if you get also a spike of insulin, it forces, or it helps the protein or the amino acids in your bloodstream get forced into the cells, and then for it to be available for protein synthesis. For most of the, I'd say, American population where they're overweight and insulin sensitivity is no longer working because they have too much sugar throughout the day, that transport system doesn't work, it breaks down.
Yeah.
So you can take all the carbohydrates you want after you work out. If you're not insulin sensitive, then those macronutrients are not going to reach your cells.
Right. So you gave white rice as an example of a high glycemic carb, which is what I eat post-workout. I have like 2 cups of white rice cooked in bone broth for the protein.
Mm-hmm.
You want to give people some examples of low glycemic carbs that they should be having?
Sure. So I'd say number one low glycemic carb in my book are probably berries. There's no benefits, you know, antioxidants, but I mean blueberries, blackberries, raspberries. Those are excellent low glycemic carbs. Sweet potatoes is one that gets often mentioned.
Isn't it like medium?
Well, yes, it is medium. It's in the 50s typically. For it to get to the 40s, and this is what I like to bring up sweet potatoes with to people, because people assume, oh, sweet potatoes, I'm gonna have sweet potato fries. Sweet potatoes are fine, low glycemic. Well, even baked sweet potatoes, the glycemic index of baked sweet potatoes, if I'm not mistaken, is close to the 70s. So it has to be boiled.
Okay.
So boiled sweet potatoes have a low glycemic index.
Interesting.
But once you bake them or fry them, because it refines the sugar, then they have a much higher glycemic index.
I did not know that.
So that's important for people to know.
All right. And what about vegetables?
But vegetables in general usually are very low glycemic.
Yeah.
It's just hard to get a lot of carbs, if you need a lot of carbs from vegetable sources.
Yeah, but for people trying to lose weight, they should
That's fantastic.
stick to
They're
low
fantastic.
glycemic, right?
Stick to low glycemic, lots of greens, you know.
Yeah. Dark leafy greens.
Dark leafy greens.
Dark leafy, dark.
Try to stay away from anything that's starchy.
Yeah.
You know.
So things like potatoes.
Things like potatoes, yeah.
Squash, right?
Especially white potatoes. Those are really, lousy. I mean, okay for post-workout, I guess.
Yeah.
But you don't want to be having those throughout the day if you're trying to.
What about carrots? Aren't carrots higher glycemic vegetable?
They're high. I mean, raw carrots are not that bad.
Okay.
I think in the 30s or 40s, if I believe.
Oh, okay.
So it's not too bad. If you cook them, then their glycemic index does go up.
Okay. So yeah, pay attention to whether you're eating raw or cooked, because obviously that plays a difference in the glycemic index.
Absolutely. And how you cook it. If it's fried, baked, or boiled. Typically boiled will affect the sugars at least.
Okay.
Because it's a low temperature.
Yeah. So we're talking a lot about the glycemic index. Do you want to talk a little bit about the glycemic load?
Yeah. So glycemic load just takes into account, because for most people they think this has a lower glycemic index than A versus B, but the glycemic load takes into account the typical serving.
Yeah.
So if something is low glycemic, but typically you eat a lot of it, then the impact on your insulin, which is glycemic load, might be higher than something that has a higher glycemic load or glycemic index, but you eat very, very small amounts of it, so the glycemic load wouldn't be as high. So that, I mean, typically speaking, you want to use glycemic load as opposed to glycemic index. It just simplifies the whole math with how much you're eating of it.
Yeah. All right, you want to cover a little bit about carb tolerance?
Yeah, so
on the topic of high glycemic, low glycemic.
So I think carbs have attracted a lot of attention lately. You know, there's a lot of, ketogenics. I mean, there's a lot of talk of low carb diets out there. And I would say that for probably 70% of the population, low carbs is a necessity when you're talking about losing body fat. Because when you work out, if you have, if your glycogen in your muscles are topped off, glycogen in your liver is topped off, that's the fuel that your body's going to rather burn when you're working out.
Yeah.
So it's going to leave your fat stores, which are, but if you think about it from our history as a species, fat, for every gram of fat, you get 9 grams of calories. For every gram of carbs, you get 4 calories, so less than half. Plus, making matters worse, for every gram of glycogen or carbs that you have in your body, you retain 4 grams of water. So it's just, it's not very efficient, it's heavy, so your body rather retain fat than carbs. Another reason, when you're working out, it's gonna burn carbs. So for 75% of the population, I'd say, if you want to lose weight, if you want to lose fat, not weight, but if you want to lose fat, carbs are not your friend. Yeah. But there is probably 30% of the U.S. population, depending on their DNA heritage, that can handle 70% of their calories coming from carbs and still lose fat. So it really depends on, this is an individualized issue where, again, for the majority of people, you want to avoid carbs, especially high glycemic carbs, if you're trying to lose fat. But there are some individuals out there who are very carb tolerant. One quick way to look at that is look at your subscapular fat. So if you pinch the fat on your back, right below your scapula, if it's less than 1 centimeter, then usually you're pretty carb tolerant, so you can have a higher percentage in carbs. But if you're above 1.5 centimeters, you're probably better off by avoiding carbs until you get to a certain percentage of body fat that you can become insulin sensitive and then probably tolerate carbs a little bit better.
Mm-hmm. All right, so let's go a little bit into the importance of blood tests and what blood tests can show you.
Yeah, we're just talking about, individualized nutrition.
Yeah.
And I don't know of any other way. You can take every supplement in the world, you can have great nutrition, but the only way to know that if your body is really absorbing the nutrients you're eating, because people say you are what you eat. Well, you are what you absorb, not what you eat. So if your digestive system isn't absorbing what it needs from the food, then it doesn't matter what you're eating. You might have to supplement A versus B. So, I think that blood tests with certain parameters, running certain panels are critical for anybody out there who wants to be, making sure that they have all the nutrients that their body needs. I don't see any other way, because you can be ingesting plenty of A, but if A doesn't get into your bloodstream, it doesn't matter. So
right.
you need to address those deficiencies, and the only way to do that is really with a blood test.
And where would you do this blood test? Like, where would be a credible, source to go to get a blood test done?
I know a couple, but I think that's something we should put on the website later.
Okay.
Because, I think it depends on the person's region, but your local doctor, your primary care physician is not going to be the person you want running your blood test.
Yeah. Okay. So, I guess let's wrap it up here. I just decided that we're going to make this a 2-part podcast because we're running on time and there's still a lot more that I would like to cover. So if you're interested in the supplement industry and what you should be taking, what you should try to avoid, we'll cover the cholesterol myth, why people thought fat was bad in the 90s and why that's not true anymore. That will all be covered in part 2. So I guess on that note, Thanks for coming on the show. But
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're gonna get part 2 going. So if you'd like to, well, let's tell people where they can find you.
They probably can't. I'm not on social media at all.
Perfect. Secret, very secret. If you are in the Southern California area though, and you would like to be coached by him at the gym, CrossFit Dana Point,
Yes,
they can find you
absolutely.
there. Right?
Absolutely, you can find me there.
Okay, cool. If you'd like to know more about Lycee, the fish oil, go on their website, lycee.com. If you'd like to order it, use code TaylorM15 for a discount. I'll drink some now just so you can see that it's actually good. Straight from the bottle. All right. You can find more about me at thecaptainslifestyle.com or follow me on Instagram at 6CaptainMorgan9. Don't forget, live the captain's lifestyle. All right.